I'd rather do a little. I'll bring a pad the next day.
This might be cut
This is
or
true.
they don't do it for share.
John's not afraid.
He's brave. It's probably noon. I'll have to send out Henry.
Yeah, we don't have to do the same thing.
Yeah. I better change that to got all stove information. No, I think if there's one slot left for general, that's what Ken said, right? Or that's what I thought he meant. So we would put one of the electric stove.
One slot, yeah, it's gonna take one slot or two slots.
Well, they all, even if you get a propane stove, except for the propane back there, they need electricity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I.
Not as many amps.
They told me to get to electric.
Okay.
But
Are you guys ready to start?
I don't think so. Yep, okay. So. Put the glasses on. We'll call the hearing to order. It's 5:01. And we need to determine whether a quorum exists. 4 of us are here, so yes. Okay, so can we approve the minutes of the November 3rd meeting?
I have not completed the.
Okay, soon though, soon, to come.
To come.
Okay, the new business we have is the application for administrative appeal for lot 106-08002, located on the corner of Haskell and North Roads. Conflict of interest or bias? You want to go there? Charles, do you have conflict of interest or bias report?
Well, I don't think so, but Fowler Lawn Care did, faithfully cut my lawn for 6 years. They, I let them go about a year ago, just because I wanted to cut my own lawn. I had Jim cut a tree for me at the end of my driveway years ago, but but I don't think that it affects my ability to be objective.
Same. I mean, we've done business with Mr. Fowler and my husband worked with Justin at the boatyard, but that's just all part of being here, right?
Right. I think so. I mean, I know Justin and Courtney from the Red Studio trips. And I don't know Jim Fowler at all, but I know his sister does that.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
I, you know,
Yes.
I also,
like all of you, I had Jim cut down some trees for me. Did a good job, safe, didn't hit my house. And that's why I had him cut them down, because my son's likely to hit the house. So, but I feel like I can be objective.
Do we need to vote?
no.
I
We don't
think
have
that's
any
pretty
conflict.
clear. No. You tell people this. You want to?
Really quick, just kind of a maintenance thing. So we are being recorded through the OWL. We do get regular complaints that it's very difficult for people to hear. Unfortunately, this system is not compatible with the surround system, so this is the best that we have to work with. If you are called or allowed to speak, that cute little gray podium, if you could stand up in front of that, facing this little owl machine and just talk as loud as you can, pretend you're yelling at your kids or something, so then it can get through and it could be heard and properly recorded.
For the person who's responsible for minutes, please follow Vic's advice, because that's my backup.
Speak up.
Speak up.
Be clear.
Thank you.
Proper notice is given for the town. Proper notice has been given to the parties directly concerned, the public, abutters, through newspaper advertisement by mail and by public posting virtually and actually of the agenda and packet for the meeting. And to summarize the appeal, this is an administrative appeal filed by Justin and Courtney Dowdy of the code enforcement officer's failure to enforce the zoning ordinance. Established jurisdiction to hear this appeal comes from Maine State Law 30A, Section 4353 and 30A, Section 2691.4, and from the town zoning ordinance, Section 202 and Section 603.2. We need to establish standing. The applicants, Justin and Courtney, being abutters, have standing to bring the appeal. Next thing is to review the completeness of the application and payment of fees. And a review indicates that it appears to be complete and the town has a receipt showing that the applicable fee has been paid. So this is an administrative appeal. We will start. We have to pretend nothing has gone on before. So we get to make our own discoveries and draw our own conclusions. Have anything to add? Nope. So the first order is the presentation by applicants, and the burden is on the applicants the burden of proof is on the applicants. Next, we usually go with the code enforcement officer. He is not here. I have a little email from him that I will read to you and then we hear from the lot owners, and then there's other parties and interested people. So before why don't we just hear from the applicants? I'll read you want me to read the CEO's letter first?
I think it'd probably be. yeah.
First, right now. Okay, on Tuesday afternoon, I got a letter from Jim Butler, our code enforcement officer. And he said, hello, Vika emailed me today saying you were not aware I could not be present for this BAA meeting. I was sent away for travel for my full-time job. I did reach out to the applicants to let them know I would not be present and see if they would be okay with waiting until the next one, which has the McKee continuation. They didn't want to wait. I also informed them that their appeal was premature and asked them to meet with myself and town admin, but they feel the need to go in front of the BAA. Have we just asked if we schedule the next meeting? I do have more travel for work coming up, but certainly will make effort to attend. And that's what we have. I do want to read you, according to our zoning ordinance, section 603.3C, it says the code enforcement officer, unless prevented by illness or absence from the state, shall attend all hearings and shall present to the board all plans, photographs, or other factual materials which are appropriate to an understanding of matters before the board.
Sam, he is out of state. He had to fly out.
Okay, well, we just. So first up are the applicants. And Courtney and Justin, you guys gotta step up to the gray code plinth.
Speak softly, so tell me to speak
You
up.
can't, you have to
They're
speak
not allowed.
loudly and forcefully.
No,
Can you sit? No, you cannot sit.
okay,
You may stand behind them and offer support. Can you describe the events that led you to file this appeal? For our,
sure. Can I read this and then you can ask me questions? That would be
sure,
easier for me.
if it's
first,
easier
that's
for
okay.
you, whatever's
Yeah,
easier for
right.
you.
And then we'll answer any questions. So my name is Justin Doughty. This is my wife Courtney. We live at 321 North Road here in Shebig. 8 years ago, we built a house and started raising a family. Approximately 4 years after that, we got a new neighbor who promptly cleared the land and put up a temporary structure constructed of mainly trees and tarps. As time went on, we saw a business start to grow and become somewhat of an eyesore to us and folks driving by. We inquired with the town about permitting, but discovered no permits had been issued on the property. We spoke to town officials asking about the situation and were told nothing could be done. We received responses like, he's a taxpayer, it's his land, it's a gray area, and this ordinance needs to be changed. We once smelled gasoline from our bedroom and confronted the property owner. He was very apologetic and understanding. After that conversation, the forestry and lawn care business-related operations on the property have continued to grow and have continued to be a nuisance to me and my family. There are business vehicles, tractors, machinery, fuel cans, trash, dead and alive cars and trucks that haven't moved in years, and a torn tarp building on the property. Finally, in July of 2021, we filed an official complaint with the town, which you've all seen. The town CEO, Jim Butler, responded to us by saying there have been many complaints, letters, and phone calls about the same property. He also claimed he would draft a notice of violation the following week. After over a year of back and forth emails and with no violation actions and no change to the property use, we were told by the town CEO, Jim Butler, that nothing could be done and that our interpretation of the zoning ordinance was merely our opinion. The CEO clearly stated that the lot's activity fell in a gray area and nothing could be done. We were told that this would fall under a contractor storage yard, which our zoning ordinance does not have. We expressed concerns about the water aquifer, and we were told we were not near an aquifer. However, our zoning ordinance clearly states that the property is on an aquifer recharge area. So we are standing here today to appeal the CEO's decision that no action is needed as the land use is a gray area within our zoning ordinance. Here are some of the sections we feel are relevant to our appeal. from the ordinance. Section 102, the purpose. Purpose of this ordinance is to promote public health, safety, and general welfare, and to encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout the town of Shebig Island, to promote traffic safety, to provide safety from fire and other elements, and to provide a wholesome home environment. Intent, section 104. Unless otherwise specified, it is the intent of this ordinance that any use not specifically allowed as a permitted use or a special exception use is prohibited. What that means to me, my interpretation is that if it's not listed, it's not allowed. Section 203.2, no use of land or building shall be allowed, nor shall any building be erected or altered for use which is not specifically allowed within the district in which it's located, except as permitted under section 500, non-conforming uses. Section 601, code enforcement officer. It shall be the duty of the code enforcement officer to enforce the provisions of this ordinance. The current use of the law in question is business related. It is not listed as an allowed use in the residential or business zones in our zoning ordinance. The law in question is in a residential zone. We feel the current use is not allowed, not even with a review by the Board of Adjustment Appeals.
Thank you. Did you ever meet with the select board or the planning board?
Yeah, we have.
Something about that.
Did you ever meet with the select?
No, it was brought up at two selectmen's meetings. One, I think, was initiated by the planning board. And we listened on Zoom because it was during COVID. And all I remember that was said at that meeting was that we need to change the ordinance. And then we went to a selectmen's meeting earlier in the fall. Because we wrote in one of our emails to the town, which I think you have, we said we may have to seek further action. And so it was in the communications portion. And I said a few words, but it was mainly to say that, you know, there's nothing the select board can do. We just want to be heard and have something happen. You know, we want help is what we're asking for. And they said they put it on the agenda in 2 meetings. That never happened, so we just filed it.
What ordinance exactly did they say they needed to change?
There was no,
Oh, it was
It's
just
just a
in
big
general,
statement
like,
that every
we have
time-
to update
yeah,
the zoning
you
ordinance.
know, this doesn't
Okay.
fit. This is, you know,
Okay.
that's what's said mostly.
Yeah, I have a question, Justin. In the materials.
Yeah.
The emails and whatnot. You and your neighbor have referred to noise.
Mhm.
And I didn't hear anything in your presentation about that.
No. Noise would fall under nuisance. So.
Can you just describe the frequency, the nature, what is this activity it's associated with?
Yeah, so on our, you know, a lot of days there's chainsaws, equipment running, and when we had babies, you know, when Courtney was pregnant, there's a lot of activity, and then we had babies born, there were 6 who were home during the week, you know, we were here, lots of activity, chainsawing, wood splitters, etc. And then I was home last fall for like a few weeks because I was injured and I heard action every day. You know, normally we wouldn't be home, but I was, unfortunately. So
Action being what?
just noise, chainsaws, tractors, banging.
And I think our final email recently was just our son's birthday on the weekend, and it was just chainsaws going all day.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like on the weekends, as well, Saturday and Sundays.
So weekends, and what time do you think on average it started? Early in the morning?
I don't know. They usually,
Until
it seems, I'm usually home around 8. It seems like 1 to 2 to 3 people, 4 show up at the property. And
around 8 AM.
Yeah.
And they're there until,
I mean, there's nothing going.
I'm not,
I mean, yeah, I think the big piece of it is just that it's obviously a business operating on it. So I think there's noise, but it's more of the amount of machinery, equipment, gas that are well as 100 yards below for the groundwater. So it's those pieces that we don't, if when we looked at the residential zone, there's 7 allowed uses under IR district zone in our ordinance. And so with the intent, we don't understand why, if it doesn't meet one of those, how it could be allowed.
Get pictures of our words aren't good enough.
oh, because it didn't say at one point, I think that there's, thanks for the picture or something.
Yeah, no, they weren't, one of those was in the email, but
It didn't.
If we could have a copy of it, could the secretary have a copy of your presentation too, for the record? If it's the only one I.
don't read my secret notes.
Okay. Thanks, Justin.
So.
There's some point in the agenda. We need to bring this up.
Like, these are those directly affected, so that's.
Okay.
Travis. Yeah, if you want to look at these. So the next category here, who can question Justin and Courtney, would be those directly affected, meaning perhaps other abutters.
That would be anybody that received a letter. If you received a notice in the mail as an abutter of this hearing, then you are the one that's directly affected.
I can't hear anything. you're
I know,
saying.
you gotta,
You have to,
The agenda has us listed after the lot owner.
your lotto, I mean,
No.
you want,
On the agenda, it said presentation by code enforcement officer, presentation by lot owner, questions from abutters and others directly affected.
okay, yeah, we just have other, so you have no questions for Justin?
We have comments, we just.
Okay, well, the next part would be the code enforcement officer, but he is out of state. So failing that, we'll go on to the lot owner, which is, you're up. Sam Fowler, come on up. Come on, speak loudly and stand at the plenum.
All I gotta do, I really have nothing to say. I wish that it didn't come to this part. We figure like Justin said, when my truck leaked gas, I went down, talked to him. They're getting told one thing from code guy, I'm getting told another thing from code guy. I can think of 100 other properties on this island that do the exact same thing as I do. Like, there's a lot of people that work out of their house. Every tradesman,
Do you
Does
have a
the same
house
thing.
there?
no, I have land.
Okay, well, there's a
Well, I'll
difference
build
between
a
having a house and just owning land, especially in
Yeah.
residential.
Well, I'm just
zones.
going by what the code guy told me, what kind of gone on this island since I've been here for 18 years. I've been on that lot for almost 14 years. I just weren't in that exact area.
Okay, because it said that you were deeded this property in
Yes,
2019, so you actually became the owner in
In
2019?
2019, before I used it under the Haskells, I used their land and parked all my stuff on it for years and years and years. You know what I mean? And in the same area, I was just behind them. Now I'm up beside it. It's not like I'm just now getting in that area. I've been in the Haskell area. I was supposed to get 3 acres right up behind there. But when Franz bought it, he didn't like that I was there. So he moved me up top. So I don't have a choice where they gave me my land. I don't know what to do, that's kind of up to you guys,
Well,
so.
yeah, we're going to think, but you live in Topsom, but your business, Affordable Tree,
It's
is
located
totally here.
No, I
No?
got just as much equipment at my house in
No, I
Boston.
So it's evenly divided?
Yeah, I can go work over there any day I want. I got the same stuff. And I'm in residential and same thing. I've never had any. I have neighbors right next to me over there. So I've never had problems over here. This is the first time I've ever even had a problem other than like the stump dump. So,
The stump dump.
you know what I mean? That's the only time I've been to these type of meetings. So like I said, I feel bad. Where they're making noise all the time, I have to say is bogus, because we're there in the morning, we grab our equipment, and we go to somebody else's yard. We do not operate a business out of there. We operate our business on the job sites. I could park my stuff every day and leave it on the job site that I go to the next day. You know, the stuff ain't there all the time. It's when I'm gone on the weekends, like noise on the weekends, I'm gone. I'm out of here at 3 o'clock and I don't get over here and start at almost 9. I take that 8 o'clock off. So I'm here from 9 to 3.
Are
And I'm
any
on-
other businesses using that law?
Me and my sister's business, it's the same business, one business.
Would your sister ever be using the lot on a weekend?
Yeah,
when you're
here
not?
and there, but everyone can split, you can split wood on your land, you can run a chainsaw on your land. When he cut his house lot, I heard him cutting nonstop for 6 months, cutting his house lot in. I was still there, I was on that property when he was doing his activity, but when I started my activity, it's not right. Like should be able to cut my land.
Well, yeah.
No, I'm not working out of it is literally a storage yard. My stuff is parked there. If there's a thing with the gasoline, which if you were to approach me, I'll get cement barriers and put my gas cans in that. You know what I mean? There's solutions to everything. You just gotta come to me and talk to me. I got sidelined by this. I didn't even know this was coming up until you called me. So, you know what I mean? I'm surprised here we are. So I'm a very reasonable person. But
Well, we try to find reasonable solutions.
yeah, so there's really, I don't have really anything to say other than I'm sorry that they feel that I'm running a business out of there. But I work in other people's yards. If I worked in my yard every day, I'd go broke. There's nobody to be paying me. I'm in people's houses. I've been to your house. I've been to just about everybody's houses in here. I go to work. My chippers are running on job sites, not sitting there winding all the time. Yes, if I clean up my yard, my chip is running. You know, when I go to people's houses, their neighbors don't complain because I'm there for 2 weeks. And it's nonstop noise. So,
I got a question. So, are you bringing back wood from other job sites, cutting it and then selling it for sale?
yeah, that's the only, like I even said to the code enforcement, that's the only thing that I could see, but I thought it was a good service to the island. Seems on, we would put it all up to the dump and most of it go to waste. Most people over here are elderly, don't want it, they can't split their own wood, and it all goes. It's not like it's sitting there for years rotting away, but like I said, I can move that over to John's land, Schuman's, the wood processing. And his is in commercial zone. If that's one of the things that it is, that I have no problem, like I said, I'm reasonable. Like, I've been here a long time, I'm a very reasonable person. Just gotta tell me that there's a problem and what to do with it.
Can you tell us whether the camper is still on your property?
No, I got hauled off right after, and that was over on Firehouse Road first, and it was there for quite a while. The people that bought Firehouse were living in it.
Yeah,
And then I ended up buying it off them. It was in my land for no, never even stayed in it. It was there for maybe a month, and then I hauled it off.
so no one ever stays
No one
overnight on your
ever,
property?
Ever,
So,
never.
okay, so you're saying you only use the property as a storage facility?
No, he said he,
The firewood,
Firewood.
the firewood is where you could get me, but if that's where we wanna go with it, like I said, there's more options. I know I could go over onto John's land and do it. You know, he already said we could do wood over there. If that's the deal breaker is the firewood, I'll stop doing it there. I'll do it somewhere else. Like I said, I'm not planning on going anywhere. I have all my eggs in one basket. Exactly like he said, I've grown a business over here. I can't just say, oh, sorry, I got a piece of land next to you.
So you are running a business? there.
Yeah, but I could go over, I'm running a business on Shabik. I've been doing this for a long period of time. It's not just this small stretch that I've been on that land for almost 14 years. Just in a different area. When they sold, they moved me up there. Before, I was down bottom. I had not as much equipment, but I still had a good pile of equipment back then. So there's not really I can say. I don't know what they want me to do, other than you guys kind of tell me what I need to do. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm reasonable. I'm not trying to piss anybody off, you know, I could build a big house up there, hotel. You know, then they'd have people partying over there all summer long, you know? I don't even live over here. It's quiet. I'm gone. When they're there, I'm not there. Like I go there in the morning, grab my stuff and we go. We might stop back in at lunch and eat it at the picnic table, but I think I can eat my lunch and pull my trucks in there. We don't run chainsaws all the time. We don't, maybe 30 days a year we work in that yard, if that.
Do you have a lot of vehicles there?
Yeah, all registered on the road.
Okay, so there are no abandoned.
There's 2 of them, and I was told if they're parts vehicles, you're allowed to have them. I have 2 running vehicles, and then I got a parts truck for each one of them.
Yeah, I think it's 3 or more
Yeah, I got 2.
non-running vehicles. So what exactly did the code enforcement
He
officer
told me,
tell you?
he said, if they gotta enforce this on me, they would have to enforce it on all contractors over here that live in a residential area.
But you
That
don't
run,
live in a.
just like you said, it's a gray area. But if you're coming after me, I can think of some that are running businesses over here in a residential area, and it's an actual business run out of it, not me parking my stuff, going to your yard and working. Stuff comes to them. So, that all. I don't really, you know what I
And
mean?
related to Sam's question, did any time during your ownership and the use of this land, were you ever advised it might be in non-compliance with the town ordinance? Ever advised that you would need to apply for a variance? Ever officially advised that what you chose to do with your lot was okay?
Yeah, he told me that it was, the code guy said that I was in compliance, the way that he felt the ordinance was, that I was all good. I thought it was all over a year ago. This, like I said, when she called me, was the first I heard back about it, from when Codes met me on the land. Walked around, showed him everything. He said, that I was in compliance.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have nothing in the record that would indicate a walk ever took place.
I know, it's in here.
No, that's an email to Courtney from the code.
Well,
Yeah,
enforcement.
but you walked.
It is not in the, it should be a separate thing kept by the code enforcement officer saying, I did this on this date, I did
There's
that.
no town record. of it.
There's
There's
no
no
record.
record, no file.
Him and Bo both come over and walk the property with me.
But-
Yeah, well, that's not me. I'm just telling him
I
on my
understand, I'm
account.
not saying it's you, but we do need to ask these questions.
Yeah, but yeah, they both come over and walk around, Bo and the code enforcement, and they both said the same thing,
Which was,
that I'm in compliance and I'm fine with what I do here.
okay. Good. Have other questions?
For Mr. Fowler.
I guess,
Thank you, Jim.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have questions from abutters and others directly affected. And you want to raise your hand and we'll recognize you. And you come. Okay, come on up.
Hi, my name is Travis Neto. I live at 327 North Road with my wife Kristen and my 2 sons. We moved to the island about 3 years ago, and I'm also a member of the planning board, sort of vice president of the board. And I guess as an aside, I'm a licensed Maine architect, been practicing in the state for nearly 20 years. And I've never heard a code officer in my career talk about gray area in zoning codes. There is no gray area in the zoning code. There's written words, and they're legally binding, and they come with a lot of consequences and penalties. I think what happened here is the consequences and penalties. The consequences and penalties got to the state where an alternative approach had to be employed. And here we are with that sort of extrajudicial process that was employed. And it didn't meet our standards at all. I had sent the board a
Yes,
memo.
yeah,
If you
we just got it.
want to recognize that for the record, or I could read it here for potential future legal proceedings.
Well, I think
Do you want to read it?
well, I think generally that's what we do.
Go for it.
If you could recognize it, we can
Yep.
leave it at that, or I can read it into the record right now.
I make a motion that we enter it into the record.
I would second that.
As printed.
Travis
Have we all read it?
Nettles,
Have we all,
Have we-
did you read it?
I didn't get to read the whole
Oh,
thing.
okay. Well, then maybe,
For the benefit.
Yeah, would you
for
mind
the board, I
reading
will read the memo. The appeals board chair, I'm writing to urge the appeals board to grant the appeal filed by Justin and Courtney Dowdy to overturn the recent code officer's decision with regard to the landscape junkyard business operating illegally on James Fowler's property on North Road. As a neighbor to the illegal use, my family is affected daily by the nuisance and dangers posed by the perpetuation of this operation in the face of numerous and repeated calls for code enforcement action over the years. Not only affecting our child and pet safety, the freedom and noise nuisance, but also unseen potential consequences to our property value, or more seriously, to our drinking water. In reading the materials presented for appeal, I feel that due process as outlined in our town ordinances was not followed in this matter, and the code enforcement officer has not properly fulfilled his duties as outlined in the town of Sheboygan zoning ordinance, or as defined by Maine statute title 38. Additionally, this decision does not align with the requirements of the town of Sheboygan zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, or the building code adoption of the enforcement ordinance, which includes non-conformance with the requirements of the building code, the energy code, life safety code, electrical code, internal plumbing code, and the subsurface wastewater disposal rules. Within the zoning ordinance alone, the following sections have been in consistent violation for years. There's 48 of them. I won't list them individually. Or maybe I should.
no,
I'll
you
just-
should, it's.
Section
part of the record.
203.1 with respect to legal setback. Section 203.2 that states no use of land or building shall be allowed, which use is not specifically allowed within the district in which it's located, island residential in this case. Section 204.1A that outlines the allowed uses, which does not include junkyard or non-home-based businesses. Section 204.1D with regard to the setback requirements. Section 205.2 lot regulations relative to setbacks. Section 206.1 on the purpose of site plan review to protect the public health and safety and to conserve the environment by ensuring that non-residential construction is designed in a way that adequate provisions have been made with regard to traffic safety, emergency access, water supply, sewage disposal, stormwater management, erosion, protection of groundwater, and minimizing adverse impacts on adjacent properties. Section 206.2A and B, where no project was brought before the planning board, despite the applicability of outlined in subparagraphs A, B, D, E, and F. As an aside, we made a request as the board to our code enforcement officer to come to the board and speak to us. Been on the board for over 2.5 years and never once has he come to a board meeting to discuss this project or others.
So you have made more than one request, not just on this property, but,
For the end, Cottage Road thing,
and he has not appeared. Has he been available by phone or by Zoom, virtually?
He's never attended the planning board meeting that I've attended.
Okay.
Section 206.3, where the decision did not follow due process with planning board review authority. Section 206.8, outlining the site plan approval standards and criteria for which decision allows non-compliance on approval standards A, B, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, Q, R, S, T, U, V, and W. Section 302, for the applicable aquifer protection requirements that are not being met. Section 303.2, regarding the storage of hazardous waste and fuels for non-residential uses. Section 414, where the illegal use does not qualify as a home occupation. Section 415, where the junkyard definition is exceeded by the use, but none of the 5 requirements are implemented. Section 419.2, requiring board appeals approval for non-residential parking areas, which was not granted prior to site clearing and parking activities. Section 419.3, requiring provisions for off-street loading. Section 424, with regard to sanitary standards, for which no provisions have been constructed. Section 426, addressing the soils, both surface erosion and subsurface pollution. Section 429, regarding the overstay of the temporary structure provisions. Section 431, which covers water quality protection. Section 500, regarding the proper procedure for non-conforming uses for which the illegal operation is not qualified and did not pursue a BOA approval prior to activities. The illegal use was brought to the attention of the code enforcement officer, who delayed his actions in hope of a, quote, voluntary compliance, his words, before finally stating that he was issuing a notice of violation and indicating that the town administrator and the town attorney are involved. Then the town enforcement officer decided that he would interpret the zoning ordinance by inventing a gray area in the ordinance language that would allow him to invent a new class of use. Unilaterally approved this new term, contractor storage yard, without planning board, town selectmen, or voter approval. This is an attempt to circumvent the whole zoning, planning, appeals, and building code processes, including all the civil penalties defined in the town ordinances in the state, Maine State Statute Title 38, Chapter 187, Section 4452, by issuing a decision to allow the illegal use to continue. Additionally, an attempt at a contract zone agreement was recently circulated in advance of appeal at the planning board meeting. And it was not processed properly through the planning board, public workshop, planning board approval, or board of selectmen approval process. And I looked forward to the testimony of the CEO and town attorney at tonight's meeting. And of course, they're not here. So that's the memo. And I would just say, you know, as somebody who volunteers a lot of time to this town on various boards and who's impacted by the issue every day, my job is to obey ordinances. All right. Even in the city of Saco, I had to obey every single Route 1 guideline ordinance they had in their book. And if I missed one, I was out. And it's just the way it is. You can't just get away with murder and say, oh, well, everybody does, and just start steady shooting. I mean, this is crazy. Anyway.
When you said, Travis, when you say an attempt at a contract zone agreement was recently circulated in advance of the appeal meeting without the proper process, where was it circulated and how did you find out about
I
it?
received a copy from the board chair at the meeting and looked at it, and it looked like the terms of some sort of contract zone agreement. Courtney made reference to it when I talked to her about it, and
So you have a copy, because it's not.
I don't have a copy now.
Oh, okay, but you saw it
I
at the
saw
planning
it,
board
yeah.
meeting, because there's no such document in this file.
I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't a lot of information in this file.
There's no file.
There is no file, except for this appeal, there is
There's no
no
file.
file.
For
So,
the record, there's
and
no
we
file on this
don't have,
project.
unfortunately, we don't have the CEO here to explain where this file may be or his thoughts on the whole thing, so that,
I'd be out of the state if I were him too.
okay.
Can I just make a comment? So from the town's perspective, I'm not one side or the other, but the town does not create a file on a property until building permits start coming in, at which point we're required to do that. And with a case like this, there's emails and things like that, but there was never a permit submitted for anything. So there was no file created for building permits, payments, things like that. So that's,
But a
that's,
complaint is, a
Yeah,
complaint came
but
in.
Vika, it is
yes.
in the zoning ordinance that the code enforcement officer shall keep a complete record of all essential transactions of the office, of which certainly you would think that, what was it called? What did you just? The contract would be a relevant thing to have in this file. He makes reference, Jim Butler makes reference to the numerous letters and phone calls he's gotten about this property. There's no sign of them in the file, which, because there's no file.
Or he has it.
Or he has it, or it's in his head, but these, they look like they were physical letters, they should be in the file, I think.
Well, I just wanna, I
Yeah.
don't
No, I-
disagree one way or another.
Right.
I'm just saying for town record purposes.
Right.
We
for the
have
code
those-
enforcement, for him,
Right.
he's
How-
doing his
how-
job.
How the
It's
complaints get and things like
509.2.
that is,
C, it's very clear, the code enforcement officer shall keep a complete record of all essential transactions of the office, including applications submitted, permits granted or denied, variances granted or denied, revocation actions, revocation of permits, appeals, court actions, violations investigated, violations found, and fees collected. It is a legal tact to not keep a file. It is, that's one way to do it. But by this, he's supposed to have this in writing.
Yeah, I mean, that's
And it
what
doesn't
the
have to do with
ordinance
the town,
says.
with the town, but, I mean, this is all spelled out perfectly clear. You know, this isn't an allowed use in the residential. If there was a house there and it could be, permitted as a home occupation, the neighbors would all there'd be a process there. They'd be able to put restrictions on its use. It may not even get approved. We have a way that's spelled out black and white in total detail. And there isn't a gray area. I mean, it's really clear. It's black and white. There's very little gray. And the problem is, when we get to the legal actions and stuff like that, such agreements shall not allow an illegal structure or use to continue unless there's clear and convincing evidence that the illegal structure or use was constructed or conducted as a direct result of erroneous advice given by an authorized municipal official, and there's no evidence that the owner acted in bad faith, or unless the removal of the structure or use will result in a threat or hazard to public health and safety, or result in substantial environmental damage, whatever, but
No, you guys have any more questions for Travis?
No.
Thank
I
you.
would second Charles's request that this be in the permit record.
Yes. Oh, so all in favor? You're not in favor of your own motion? Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. Well. Okay. Next up, do we have other abutters who'd like to say something?
My wife.
Sure, you need to come up and just identify yourself and,
Sorry, I'm not a public speaker. I did not plan on speaking, but I can't just sit here at the same time. My husband was not aware to even speak tonight, so he as well as a public speaker, as you can tell. We used to clarify, I'm saying we used to stay over here when Haskell's were here, because there's a house and we used to stay over here. And we have every intention of one day being residents here. We have not got there yet. Our sons are in school. We used to stay here in the summers, which we still have stayed here a couple nights during the summer, but during the school week, I'm sure you guys with kids are, does not work out. As for them bringing up sewage and nobody's going to the bathroom, there's no like outdoor facility there. So I'm kind of confused by that. And the noise complaint, my husband works at other people's properties. He does not, he barely works, you know, and it started as storing his equipment and plans of us one day building a structure. The structure that is temporary that he built was the kind of outline of he plans on a barn with a loft.
So where is this temporary? I never go by this lot, so I don't even know, so.
Yes, which I agree when it needs a tarp or a roof, like I'm completely on board, like he needs a better structure there, I'm not. But the problem is like, they never came and talked to him about anything, he's very. As soon as the code officer, when him and the code officer walked around the property and he said he needed this car, he immediately did what was told of him, immediately. There has never been any complaints, I don't know what is, or at least not to him. No, he's never gotten formal complaints, never saying that what he's doing is wrong.
And I think.
And until-
Jim
and sorry,
said-
until
or Courtney
them.
said that they smelled gas at one point and
Which
went over and
he-
talked to Jim.
Yeah, and it
about
was immediately resolved. He has gas and diesel there, acting like he has nuclear waste there. I'm sure most of these properties have gas and diesel on their property.
Well, how much?
I'm assuming just cans.
Yeah,
Like how many cans?
now, like 20 gallons at a time is about all I have.
And normally, it's at people, like it's in his trucks and being brought to people's job sites. I guess that's all.
When you said you slept over a couple times this summer,
Yes.
where did you sleep?
Oh, no, when we used to.
Oh,
sleep
when-
with
when the-
yes,
when the
with
Haskells owned the
yes, they were
property.
generous enough to let us sleep in their property. But anytime that someone needs to go to the bathroom, they use the public facilities or the place where they're working, so it's not like people are going to the bathroom, so I didn't understand what they meant by sewage.
Okay.
But yes, anytime he took care of everything that the code enforcer told him.
And well, probably Jim would know this more. How many times did the code enforcement officer speak to you about this problem?
One time.
Once.
And he did everything that the code enforcer told him to do,
And-
including we are removing that beyond the car is supposed to be being barged. I think shortly to go, yes, that's what Pascal gave us,
Yeah,
to go over to the mainland.
Another thing that is already here on the island that I
right.
just ended up with that I gotta get done here.
So you only ever spoke to him once. How about this
Well,
site walk? Was that twice or?
Originally, I called him before I even put up the temporary structure. I called him and said, do you need a permit to put up a temporary structure? He said, no, you need no permit to put up a temporary structure. And then, so that's when I put up the structure.
There's time.
There is a time limit on that, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I-
it's a
I-
good
Not being
first
told
step
these things.
to,
Yeah.
right, it's a good first step to contact your code enforcement officer and ask about these things.
Yeah,
But as a lot owner, you do have an obligation to read the zoning ordinances. If just,
yeah.
you know, you want to say, okay, you may sit down.
Unless you have any
Thank
questions.
you. So it does behoove you to read the zoning ordinance
Yeah, no.
to see if they affect you or not. And then with questions, you can always ask the code enforcement officer, I think the members of the planning board.
Well, I reached out to code enforcement, he told me there was no problem with it, so I didn't.
And we have no record of that.
Yeah. Oh.
Just saying. Okay, so does anyone? Go on up.
or Maine. I live at 250 North Road. Been there for about 30 years. I want to thank this board. Finally, it feels like there's a process beginning here that should have been set in motion much earlier than this, based on the testimony we've heard so far. So I think we're finally at a place where we're beginning this process in a public process. And I'm sorry we have to drag everybody through the public process, but that's the way things work. So I do feel like we're on the right track to doing this in a logical, orderly way that's good for the community. And I really had one simple statement besides thanking him. And I don't need to tell this board this, but sometimes we as a community and as leaders of the community lose sight of the fact that, you know, what our ordinances are for. And I just wanted to kind of get it in the record that our ordinances are, in my opinion anyways, these land use ordinances and zoning ordinances are a way of forming the future of the town, what the town's going to look like in 50 years, 100 years, when we're long gone. And it's really important that we do this public process and that we don't bend the rules too far. And ordinances are imperfect, but we have a process, as Charles pointed out, we have a process that allows us to come as a community together and work these things out. So I don't think this is just a dispute between two landowners. I think this is a community dispute, not even a dispute. It's a community issue that needs to be aired in the public about what the future of the island is going to look like. Are we mixing residential and business? How much of that can we support? Let's get it on the table and talk about it, which is what we're doing now. So thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. Both members of the family get to speak.
Carol White, 250 North Road, so I'm in the zone. But I'm here speaking, I'm also on the board of selectmen, but I'm here speaking as a professional hydrogeologist, and I've done a lot of work on the groundwater on Shabig over the past 30 years. And I understand that it's not nuclear waste, but petroleum products stored on a site are a significant risk to the groundwater supply, particularly if they're not stored in a way that is protective. And thinking about how petroleum is stored on the island, the town has petroleum storage at the public safety building, that's in double wall tanks with containment. The boatyard has double containment. So I think, you know, the standard is there for a reason, and it's to protect the groundwater. And so storage of even only 20 gallons in individual jugs is a concern. And I was questioned about this property by several individuals who live in the area, whether there's a risk associated with petroleum storage. And yes, there is. And I think it's fortunate that there wasn't a problem with the spill that the Dowdies reported, or the odor that they reported, and I appreciate that Jim responded. But we've had a number of petroleum spills on the property, on the island, and, you know, it can be a significant cost and hassle to get them cleaned up, and sometimes they're very difficult to clean up. So I think that, I see that as a concern with the current use of the property. And if it had gone through a more public process, no matter what that would be an issue that would have to be addressed through a planning board process or other process. So that's my concern. And I think in the current sort of ad hoc way that it's being handled or not handled, there's no protections for the petroleum storage. And I'm just going to say that I think it sounds to me like the lack of a record on, I heard what Vika said, but I feel like I have to offer again in my professional capacity as a hydrogeologist. If I go into a town file and there's been an inspection of a property by the code enforcement officer, there's a record in the file typically of that inspection and what the findings are. So I think that is a more typical thing that you would see in terms of code enforcement, is if there has been an inspection, which apparently Jen says there has been, then there should have been a record and a finding related to that inspection. So that's one of the reasons we're all here tonight, because, you know, I mean, I think we don't know where things stand, so. anyway.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Paul's next. You're next, Paul. On deck. Ernest.
Hi, good evening. Paul Baleska, 62 Sawyer Road. I have concerns tonight when I hear that our code enforcement officer says this meeting is premature. I also heard that the problems have been documented for over 4 years. I know that the Dowdys have also expressed that they've had formal communication going on with the town about this for over 2 years through the Board of Selectmen. So I don't consider this premature. This is long overdue. I've always looked at this board as one of the key roles in governance for the town of Shabig Island. An administrative appeal is a very common activity. I've done it twice, all right? I was rejected by the code enforcement officer on an application for an activity at the boatyard, encouraged to go to the Board of Adjustment Appeals for an administrative decision on his rendering. When that was reversed, I was then directed to go to the planning board, also part of the process, to then get final permission to proceed. At that point, it was very positive. Okay, the relationship with the CEO was positive at that point, even though we initially declined to sign off on the project. When it went through the Board of Adjustment and Appeals and the planning board, it came back to him, he then agreed to move forward. At no time during the process was the consent agreement ever contemplated. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first time in the town of Shabig Island that a consent agreement has been proposed. And at this point, to inject a new standard, a new definition of a contractor storage yard into our zoning, it doesn't exist. If we want to change the zoning, there's a process to do so. I have concerns that the code enforcement officer's decision to enter a consent agreement and change our zoning is the wrong way to make it happen. This town itself has demonstrated before what the right way is to make it happen. When there were different uses and other activities that weren't permitted on town property, the town sought special exceptions. I look back, the kids' place was not supposed to be there. There's a public process for a special exception. We went through that, the Board of Adjustment and Appeals granted it. The antenna at the town office, special exception. The solar array at Public Works, special exception. It's easy to look back through the records at all of the home occupations on this island that have been documented and permitted as special exceptions. There are also records in the Board of Adjustment Appeals for business operations on unoccupied land. And in each and every one of these cases, the burden is on the landowner to come forward, declare his intent, say what he wants to do in a public process, and seek a special exception. In this case, however, the concern I have is that the code enforcement officer apparently wants to grandfather through consent agreement objectionable activities. It was raised by several people that hundreds of others are doing things. Well, you know what? That really doesn't matter, because when I came in the room, you were determining standing. And in this case, okay, the standing is it's an abutter. And an abutter on this island has always had a strong say in any activity. So this isn't some drive around looky-loo saying that I've seen some code violations and I want to make an issue. These are abutters who have expressed in writing to the town their concerns. You folks have the right, okay, to determine what's black and what's white. It's very clear within your authority, and I ask you to follow through. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
Does anyone have questions for Paul? No? Come on up, Bob.
My name is Bob Ernest. I live at 12 Rose Point Road. I'm currently a member of the select board. Before that, I was on the planning board. I've chaired the planning board for several years. And this topic was a discussion several times that we were directed to, as a planning board, stay away from, leave it up to the then town administrator. and the code officer talked
So
about
Jim Fowler's property
the
specifically.
Dowdy complaint
Okay.
and Jim Fowler property.
Okay.
Back up just a minute. It came before the planning board.
It was brought to the planning board's attention. I'd have to look back at the records to see how. But it would show up in the minutes of the planning board. I think specifically what would show up in the minutes would be that the chair had talked to the town administrator and had been told, planning board has no involvement in this. This needs to be between the town administrator and the code officer. There's a legal process. For reference, I think there was questions about an email that you guys didn't have a copy of. I have a copy of it. It was from Jim to the Dowdys and maybe a copy to one other person on September 12th.
Probably.
And in that email, there was mention,
Of this year?
September
22.
12th, the good morning, then reviewing.
yeah, so
this,
the fifth or sixth item in there refers to the proposed consent decree.
Draft of consent
Okay, so
agreement.
you did have a copy of that. Okay, I think that's what
Yes.
I'm trying to.
But there's no evidence in the, I mean, this is an email. It's not really an official document. It's an email to Courtney and Justin. There's nothing in this file that says draft consent agreement.
And that's not my reason for being up.
Yeah,
Just
so
wanted to say-
I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm
Understood.
just saying
Understood.
it could exist, but we don't know.
Couple of, so I also want to start by saying I've worked with Jim many times. Jim has done a lot of work on this island for me and a whole bunch of other people. They do good work and it's a service that we need out here. But we have to live up to our code ordinance. I think it's incumbent on you guys and on the community to find a solution here. But the solutions that were in that email do not pass muster for me personally. Not speaking as a select board member, just personally. If you look at section 104 of the zoning ordinance, 2018 revision, the paragraph titled intent states, unless otherwise specified, it is the intent of this ordinance that any use not specifically allowed as a permitted use or a special exception use is prohibited. If it's not, and this is repeated throughout the ordinance in several different ways, if it does not show up on a list of allowed uses, it cannot be done. You guys can't allow it to be done. There is a table of things you can say yes to if you want to go from the business to the residential. Those tables are there, but if it's not listed as a use, it cannot be done here without a change to the ordinance, which would have to go through town meeting or some other mechanism like contract zoning, which we've never done here, that kind of thing. So I'm going to skip down to 601.1 under the section of the zoning ordinance relative to the code enforcement officer. 601.1 states, it shall be the duty of the code enforcement officer to enforce the provisions of this ordinance. The selectman and town administrator shall assist the code enforcement officer by reporting to him any new construction or use of land and apparent violations of this ordinance. And I'm only pointing that out in that I believe our code officer is a well-informed code officer who really wants to help people build things out here. But I personally believe he's ignoring that part of the ordinance in some of these actions or lack of actions. 203.2 may have been cited earlier tonight. No use of land shall be allowed which is not specifically allowed within the district in which it is located. The list of Island Residential District, the following uses are permitted in the Island Residential District. I won't read through it all, but there's nothing there that allows splitting wood for business. There's nothing there that allows storing vehicles. And to the point that it happens elsewhere, it does. We haven't had complaints elsewhere. We have had a complaint here. But I think if you put those two things together, it paints the kind of path that Herb referred to. We need to figure this out. We have to have, there are services that this island has to have. And we can hope that somebody will do it who lives out here. Increasingly, that's difficult to do because of the lack of housing. So I'm not, I really want to help and be part of some sort of solution that goes through the proper town meeting process that finds a way to make this work. But a consent decree or writing a few letters and saying it's all good now, I don't think that's anywhere close to passing muster with our ordinance. And relative to the records discussion, I would refer to 601.4. There should be a file on this.
This should be what's saying.
A file, if you read 601.4 in the 2018 code. Thank you.
Bob.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question for Bob? Right, so, do you have any further comments? Katie?
Okay, Valor, I just want to sum it up that we don't like ever have waste oil at the site or anything. We take it right up to the transfer station. We don't just leave it out for like, to get into the ground. Like the island's important to us. We take care of it like it should be taken care of. We know about the transfer station. We bring it up as soon as, it never sits. We bring it right up to the transfer station. We never have oil or, like, we don't even need the gas. We're leaving our vehicles. Everybody drives vehicles over here, and we don't need fuel tanks. We can get rid of all the gas cans and we'll just leave in the equipment. We don't, it's not like we store a bunch of gas over here. We go down to the boatyard, we get it like everybody else. We don't store oil or nothing. We bring it right to the transfer station. It never sits. We bring it right, as soon as it's there, we bring it to the transfer station. It's never lasts. I just want to clear that up for everybody, that we don't just leave oil or gas. We take care of the island like everybody else does. It's an important place for us, so we don't just leave stuff out. Like, I just feel like everyone's acting like we leave our oil. We don't, we take care of it. It's not left out ever. It's brought, like she said, at the transfer station, we know we bring it up and Doug and Chuck take care of it or whatever, but we leave it up there. We do not leave it at the fork or, at my brother's land.
We're not trying.
I'm just
to
saying, I feel like everybody's
we-
saying we leave oil and stuff. I just want you to know that the island's important to us and we wouldn't.
Expressing
Just
how
leave
important the
oil.
island is to you, and your brother has expressed the fact that he would like to comply, if he knew what he was.
Oh, yeah, like I
complying
said,
with,
we
he
won't.
would comply.
We
So-
don't-
We appreciate that, I'm sure that Dowdy's appreciate.
But yeah, I just want to clear it up
Thank
that
you.
nothing's ever left there. Like, we always take it right to the transfer station. It's never left.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
I think we've heard conflicting information on the,
You may read, we can call, if no one else would like to speak, we can have a rebuttal here.
Well, no, this is, I just want to be clear, nowhere in our application did we specify Jim himself. This is not an attack on Jim. His business is important to the island. We do feel that. I like chainsawing, I have tractors, but I do live here and it's not a business zone. That is the point and why we're here.
Exactly. Yes,
I just
thank
wanna make
you,
that
clear.
Justin. Thank you. Anybody else? Comments? Okay, well, I gotta find the agenda.
Yeah.
I gotta put on my glasses and, oh, he's got it. So we can close it out to comments from everybody. So we're done. Okay, so we're gonna close this hearing to public comments, and now we're going to discuss and deliberate. And
And you're welcome to stay.
yes, you're welcome to stay, or you may go out to the lobby for refreshments. So, okay. The next thing we have is we have the pre-hearing findings, or the findings of fact, which I guess I can read into the record, you guys can agree or disagree.
No, I think, again,
We need, okay,
we need to do this, and it will be part of the record that will be available to everybody, and of course, it'll be available on,
okay, so let's let her rip. Okay, so according to zoning ordinance, section 603.2, the board shall have the following powers and duties. Interpretation upon appeal from a decision of the code enforcement officer where it is alleged by an aggrieved party that there is an error in any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by or failure to act by the code enforcement officer. The board shall determine whether the decisions of the code enforcement officer are in conformity with the provisions of this ordinance and interpret the meaning of the ordinance in cases of uncertainty. First, our history is that Justin and Courtney Dowdy live at 321 North Road, owners of record of lot 10619A, and are direct abutters of map 106 lot 018-002 at the corner of Haskell and North Road. They, Justin and Courtney, have been corresponding with the town and the code enforcement officer since at least July 30th, 2021. The lot in question was granted to James Fowler Jr. by $1 for quitclaim deed from Roger and Susanna Haskell on July 30th, 2019. And then that's Cumberland County Registry of Deeds, book 35849, page 294. The CEO states in an email dated 9/12/22 to the applicants that this started happening before I became code officer on the island. James Butler has been the code enforcement officer for the town since at least May 2nd, 2019. So there's that. So Jim Fowler is the owner of lot 18, but does not reside there, nor is there any sort of residential structure on the property. Both properties are in the Island Residential District, and that's zoning ordinance appendix A. Both properties are in the Aquifer Recharge Area, that's zoning ordinance appendix C. Where uncertainty exists as to the exact location of district boundary lines, the Board of Adjustment and Appeals shall be the final authority as to location. According to, the zoning ordinance contains no definition of a contractor storage yard, nor any ordinance related to a contractor storage yard. The CEO, that's code enforcement officer, CEO cannot base any rulings or path of action on a non-existent ordinance, even if it is one that, quote, would make sense for the planning board to make some amendments to the zoning ordinance and to include that definition and to decide how they would like to handle that activity, end quote. According to zoning ordinance section 601.2, if the code enforcement officer shall find that any provision of this ordinance is being violated, he or she shall notify in writing the person responsible for such violation, indicating the nature of the violation and ordering the action necessary to correct it, including discontinuance of illegal use of land, building, or structures, or work being done, removal of illegal buildings or structures, and abatement of nuisance conditions. A copy of such notices shall be submitted to the municipal officer and be maintained as a permanent record. Sorry, this is sort of dry. Contrary to the CEO's October 19, 2022 statement to the Dowdies that we can't single out one property, this enforcement would need to be town-wide. Section 601.1 clearly states, quote, it shall be the duty of the code enforcement officer to enforce the provisions of this ordinance. According to zoning ordinance section 601.4, the code enforcement officer shall keep a complete record of all essential transactions of the office, including applications submitted, shoreland zoning permits granted or denied, variances granted or denied, revocation actions, revocation of shoreland zoning permits, appeals, court actions, violations investigated, violations found, and fees collected. Other than the appeal currently before the board, there is nothing else in the file for the Fowler lot. There is no record of the statement by the CEO to the Dowdies that there has been complaints and there has been letters and phone calls about the property made since at least July 30th, 2021. There is no record of the notice of violation said to be pending as of July 30th, 2021. There is no record of a consent agreement between Fowler and the town. There is no record of the list of action items, that's a quote, given to Jim Fowler to complete. There is no record of any meeting between the CEO and Jim Fowler. There is no record of any conversation between the applicants and the CEO or between the CEO and the town legal. There is no record of the CEO sharing his findings with the select board. Okay, now so in the Island Residential District, running a business is, with few exceptions, not a permitted use. That's section 204.1A. The CEO posits that, quote, if we utilize the strict definitions within our ordinances, end quote, it would impact many similar uses. There is no ordinance allowing a less than strict definition of our ordinances. The CEO states on September 2nd, 2021, that he called the owner to discuss the complaint, and the following week we walked the site and it was cleaned up substantially. There is no record of this site walk or the phone call. So, so the next part is island residential and island business zoning. In the island residential district, the following is allowed as a special exception, requiring the approval of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. It's any use permitted in island business subject to site plan review, according to section 204.1B. So the board has not received an appeal for a special exception regarding this property. Running a junkyard, a lumber yard, or tree removal and processing business is not a permitted use in the island business district, section 204.2. According to section 206.2D, a person who has right title or interest in a parcel of land must obtain site plan approval prior to commencing any of the following activities on the parcel: obtaining a building or plumbing permit for the activities, or undertaking any alteration or improvement of the site, including grubbing or grading. The establishment of a new use, even if no buildings or structures are proposed, including uses such as gravel pits, cemeteries, golf courses, and other non-structural, non-residential uses. According to section 414, the business does not meet the definition of a home occupation or home-based occupation, because that means an occupation based or located within a dwelling or an accessory structure, which is performed or conducted at a location or locations remote from the dwelling. So the next. Yeah, okay. So next, to address the aquifer recharge area, both the Dowdy property and the Fowler property are in the aquifer recharge area. According to Chapter 3, Protection and Improvement of Water, Subchapter 1, Environmental Protection Board, Article 1, Organization and General Provisions, MRSA, Section 301.1C. Aquifer recharge area means land composed of permeable porous material or rock sufficiently fractured to allow infiltration and percolation of surface water and transmit it to aquifers. Aquifer protection is covered in zoning ordinance section 300. Section 303.2 states that the following uses shall only be allowed upon a positive finding by the planning board that the proposed use, with any conditions imposed by the board, will not adversely affect the quality of groundwater. And E is storage of petroleum or other refined petroleum products, with the exception of petroleum products used for household purposes, and then disposal of other leachable materials, with the exception of, yeah, okay. Keep going down. No cancer. Okay. So we can skip this one. and we have according to section 203.2, no use of land or building shall be allowed, nor shall any building be erected or altered for use, which use is not specifically allowed within the district in which it is located, except as permitted under section 500.c. So I think we run through a lot of things. We can go over, there may be a question about island residential and island business use. And we have a printout of those pages. Oh. Just the printout of the island business and island residential use.
That's my own business.
Oh, yeah, it's right here. So here it is, 204.1 is island residential district. Do you want to just go over them quickly? Just this.
The
Just
following
for the
uses are
record.
permitted in the island residential district. 1, single-family detached dwellings and duplex dwellings. 2, manufactured housing and mobile home parks as defined in 30A MRS section 435B, parentheses 1. 3, agriculture. 4, uses related to commercial fishing, including storage and repair of traps, seine, boats, and other equipment, the keeping and cooking of fish for sale at retail on the premises, and fish processing as a home occupation. 5, private heliport for personal use, subject to site plan review and to the provisions of sections 420. 6, antennas as defined in section 110, subject to site plan review in section 427. 7, uses and buildings accessory to those above. Section B, the following uses are allowed as a special exception in the IR district, requiring the approval of the Board of Adjustment Appeals. 1, home occupations. 2, above ground utility lines not located in a public way. 3, private kennels. 4, temporary sawmill, subject to the provisions of sections 42B, 428. 5, excavation of lands, subject to the provisions of sections 411. 6, animal husbandry. 7, municipal buildings and uses subject to site plan review. 8, accessory structures of public utilities subject to site plan review. 9, cemetery subject to site plan review. 10, private clubs subject to site plan review. 11, religious institutions subject to site plan review. 12, funeral homes subject to site plan review. 13, any use permitted in island business district subject to site plan review. 14, boat building, storage, or marina subject to site plan review. 15, private schools subject to site plan review. 16, boarding kennels subject to site plan review. 17, riding stables subject to site plan review. 18, professional office buildings subject to site plan review. 19, campgrounds. 20, extraction and or bulk storage of groundwater subject to the provisions of sections 430. 21, daycare centers and nursery schools subject to the provisions of section 409 site plan review. 22, uses and buildings accessory to those above. See the following, well, I don't know, we
Yeah,
don't
I
need to
think-
go into the lots.
Right, those are the allowed.
Except we do have the setback issues.
Do you want to
But we
go?
don't even get to that.
You want to discuss the setback issues? Because I think they were brought up by Travis.
Okay, so if you do make it that far, the following minimum setbacks are required for all structures in the IR district that are more than 1.5 acres in size or that were created on or after August 1st, 1975, except that sheds and driveways are permitted to a minimum setback of 15 feet from the side and rear lot lines. Front 55 feet, rear 65 feet, side 30 feet, combined with at least 65 feet, both sides. Shoreline setbacks shall be as required by the shoreline zone ordinance. But we don't.
Right, so we don't know whether that temporary structure actually meets the side setback requirements, because there's nothing in the record to indicate that. Whether it does or not, and whether or when it was approved as a temporary structure. I think they have, what, a 6-month, is it, Cheryl, is it 6 months that they can exist?
Yeah, 6 months for a temporary structure.
That sort of assumes that you're building something on that property, is that correct? Okay,
Yeah.
so we do have people using like the Quonset hut storage things, and then that does get into sort of a gray area, like the whole thing that we've done in the past.
It's
The
not
shed
really a
versus
gray
the
area
garage.
either.
Right, no, but I mean
If
the
they
shed
become a permanent-
versus
a permanent
garage.
structure, then the town can collect taxes on them. And if they are permanent, and they just happen to be made out of plastic and steel, they're permanent. So there is kind of a, maybe it's gray, but. Oh,
No, but we've had problems in the past with people doing sheds or garages, because there's no specific definition in our ordinance. There's no differentiation between shed and garage. There's the functional definition.
well, I was actually on this board when we made a decision that has been totally not correctly interpreted by other people. There, we came out with a decision to allow the boatyard to build boatyard size sheds and have them right up to the line. Because there are 2 definitions of a shed in Webster's dictionary, and we directly went with them. One is a potting shed, that is a home-size shed. And number 2 is a shed like a lumber shed or a boatyard shed. And in Maine, if you go to any lumber yard, you'll see big buildings with roofs on them and racks, and those are sheds, and they're huge. And you'll go to boat yards and they'll be stuck on little areas in close proximity to the water, and they have big buildings. So the misinterpretation came as subsequent code enforcement officers started erroneously calling garages sheds, but that was just stupid. All you had to do is open up Webster's, there are 2 definitions, and maybe we didn't do a good enough job writing our
I'm not
opinion.
suggesting
So
that.
that
I'm
other
saying
people-
that we probably, in our ordinance, we need a clear definition
Yeah.
of shed, of Quonset hut covered with plastic, of garage. Because
Yeah.
it has of a
I know a garage, it's
two-story.
like pornography. I know a garage when I see one.
Okay. Yeah, so, but it has been a problem.
It is a
in the
problem.
past.
It's a big
And
problem.
but, so. We have other things that we would like to bring up. You guys have other things to talk about, or you think we've pretty much covered it? Any comments over there? Charles and Cheryl? No? Okay, well, then the next thing we'll do is go on to the, I guess, do we make a motion to, we have to approve the pre-hearing findings of facts? I don't remember ever doing that.
Well, what? So-
Okay, so the next thing is the statements of the facts found and conclusions, which we will have to vote on. And we may add ones or jettison these if you don't approve, guys. So in the absence of the CEO himself and the absence of any written official record of the history of this complaint, we must rely solely on the presentation by the applicants to confirm or deny this appeal. So the first thing we need to rule on is the applicants have or have not met the burden of proof in this appeal. someone like to
Make a motion that, the applicants have met the burden of proof in this appeal.
I would second that.
All in favor? Okay, the next point is the code enforcement officer failed to act or acted in a manner concordant with the town of Shabig Islands zoning ordinance.
Make a motion that the code enforcement officer failed to act in a manner concordant with the town of Shabig Islands zoning ordinance.
I would second that.
All in favor? Okay. So the owner of lot IO 6018002 is not operating an unpermitted business in the island residential zone.
Anybody else wanna make anything?
Does Cheryl want to make a motion?
Got somebody's permission.
No.
I'm trying to find my.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that the owner of the lot I 06-018-002 is not operating,
Is not
is
operating?
operating an unpermitted business in the island residential zone.
And then a second? Oh, Charles. Okay, all in favor? Okay. So the next thing is, I guess we can skip this, it was,
I would.
yeah, okay, so just jettison number 4. And 5. Okay, so the last one is the owner of lot IO 6018002 is not operating in violation of the zoning ordinance to protect the aquifer recharge area.
I would make a motion that the owner of lot I 06-018-002 is operating in violation of the zoning ordinance to protect the aquifer recharge area.
I'd second that.
All in favor? You abstaining or you're not in favor? So 3-1.
Charles is thinking.
We have time.
Well, see, you know. We do need to go.
Well, they're not, well, there have been concerns, that's why it's in there, and Carol and Courtney, and Justin, have expressed concerns about it. So that's why it's in here. If you don't feel it's appropriate, we can, I mean, I think the 3 of us feel that it's appropriate.
Yeah, you don't need my vote.
No.
Okay, well, then we're leaving you out, so you abstain.
I would like
Yeah.
to do this. I would just like
Yeah,
to know
come
what
on.
your concern is.
Okay, right. Well, you don't think it's applicable, or you just want to abstain?
They were actually, let's just clarify, they were, I guess it's just if they were, in order to be in compliance, they would have had to have done, they would have had to have gone through all the other
Oh,
stuff.
I see what you're saying.
Oh, so you're
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
it's premature, it's moot in a way?
Yeah, because we only allow for storage of petroleum products for residential personal use. And seeing as it's not a permitted business use.
So should we cross it out?
I really don't know, this is beyond my capacity at this time of the night. I need a cup of coffee and a donut.
I'd like to do that too. You can have my water.
But that's just the way my brain works.
Right, I think that
If it had gone through all the other stuff, that would have had to
That
have
would-
been addressed.
yeah, I think
Right, so it's like, is it redundant?
maybe
But-
the issue here is that the code enforcement officer told the Dowdy that they were not in an aquifer recharge area, which
Right.
they are. So should it be
Absolutely. Okay, thank
rephrased appropriately?
No,
Didn't-
so we
wasn't
did
that
have
in
the findings,
of
we
fact?
already did that, we did have the finding
Of that,
Yes, we
of
did.
that,
so,
that we read the suggested finding of that. which was-
okay, so.
Which was that it
so
is, that it was that they are.
They are, yeah, so bing, 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 we cross it out, so, okay?
Okay, so
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we we find that it is in the aquifer recharge zone.
Okay,
Yes.
let's, can we rephrase that then, so the owner, so
Contrary to the CEO.
you make a motion that. the-
Contrary to the CEO's assertion.
Is you make a motion that the owner of lot I-06-018002 is in the aquifer recharge area contrary to. I mean, I don't know if that's,
Well, we have his email saying that. So
we have
it's
this
his advice.
email saying to Courtney and Justin, we have nothing in the record of it talked about anything,
Okay, so leave off any mention of him.
ever.
And that,
We've already covered it in the findings of fact, that
Okay,
both of
so-
the properties are in the aquifer
Okay, so
recharge
we
area.
don't need to, I mean, there's not really anything. Okay, so then, does anybody else have? Okay, so then the decision would be based on the findings of fact and conclusions. The town of Big Island Board of Adjustment and Appeal voted as follows. So, the applicant, we voted,
Applicants have or have not met the burden of proof in the appeal.
yes, we just have to get the official decision. So the applicants have, we voted 4-0 that they have met the burden of proof in this appeal. The code enforcement officer failed to act in a manner concordant with the town's zoning ordinance. That was 4-0, and the owner of lot 50601 is operating an unpermitted business in the island residential zone. Is that it? Oh, nope, we're not done. Yeah, yep, I think we're done.
Next one.
Right, so then we skip on down to the last one, which is the board. Oh, okay, guys, the Board of Adjustment and Appeals have voted to
Alright,
grant the appeal.
we have to vote.
Vote on it.
Okay, so we vote, do you want to
I'll make the motion that the Board of Adjustments and Appeals for the town of Big Island vote to grant the appeal.
All right,
second,
all in favor? All right, I think we are done here.
Thank you for coming here.
Yes, and thank you for your patience.
Yes.
Well,